You know, it is no secret our guest is a self-starter. Best example is High Point University and how it's developed over the 10 years, the decade that he's been there. But beyond that, this university president is engaged in critical dialogue around issues like economic development, immigration reform, and of course, education, to name just a few. We welcome back to the program High Point University President Dr. Nido Qubein. Dr. Qubein, welcome. Good to have you.
Thank you, Chris.
You've heard the dialogue. Nido, what is a brutal truth about education in this state, in North Carolina, rather?
Well, I suspect the brutal truth is in North Carolina as it is everywhere else. It's about relevance. Education today has to acknowledge that we have to be educating young people, whether in elementary school or in universities, in a relevant way, preparing them for a life that is very competitive. In the college level, we understand that, for example, our graduates no longer today compete on a national stage, on a continental stage, but rather on a global platform. And that means they're going to have to be job creators, not merely job takers. That means they have to be relevant in all that they do. Average is out, excellent is in. And excellence today is measured by relevance. That does not necessarily take away the value of liberal arts, very important, how we think, how we solve problems, how we relate to others. But it does really mean that today's corporations and organizations are looking for men and women who are educated, not merely trained. And what that means is that we have to bring something of value to everything that we do. That really puts a tremendous amount of pressure on our educational system, in the sense that we can no longer be purely academic. We have to also be practitioners in what we do, and we have to give something that's pragmatic and real. Education is very expensive today, and parents are asking, you know, how do I make sure that when my son or daughter finishes, let's say, university education, they have somewhere to go, something to do, they get off my my payroll, and they begin to contribute to society. Now, you know, Chris, of course, financial resources and other issues will always be challenges for education. But I'm talking in a larger scheme. Relevance is the focal point that we should all be attentive to.
You mentioned value and you mentioned cost, and there's a lot of discussion about that right now in higher education. There was a recent study, well, several years ago, trying to get at the value added by university education. And it was a distressing finding that I think it was around a third of undergraduates at some of our elite institutions of higher education simply had no evident learning over the course of their 4 years. They tested roughly the same place before and after. And so even some of the other students that had modest gains, I think people would wonder, was it worth the tremendous cost? So is there a problem with the value proposition in higher education? And is there a role for new institutions, for innovation, for technology, to improve that proposition?
I think the short answer to your question is yes to all the above. The question is, what do we do about it? I'm not sure that there's a problem with value as much as there's a challenge about value interpretation. That we in higher education maybe sometimes don't do as good a job interpreting the value from an application perspective. John, at High Point University, I teach all the freshmen. All the freshmen take my President's Seminar on Life Skills, and then I teach the seniors. And those are just two examples of ensuring that the value of going to college is not merely what you learn inside the classroom, but rather the greater value is how you evolve, how you develop as a human being, how you grow in wisdom. If all you have is information, people will use you and discard you. If all you have is knowledge, people will call upon you only when they need you. But if what you have is wisdom, people will respect you. The question is, how do we create that wisdom in young people 18 to 22? And the answer is that we have to create a zone in which, through which, by which they grow. That is to say, creating models and mentors and heroes they want to emulate. That is to say, you don't teach values, but you model those values. So I think it's all about the definition of why do we go to college in the first place. You can stay at home and download on your computer more information in a week than you can learn in a semester. But that's not really why we go to college. We go to college to grow, to mature, to evolve, to build relational capital, to learn how to be solution finders, not merely problem solvers. Payscale.com, as you know, is a very respected source for determining value. In North Carolina, among private schools, they rate High Point University as number 4 among 35 or 36 private schools. But those are debatable issues. You know, what is value? Is it in the eyes of the beholder? Is it measured by the result? I get a job, I make a lot of money. What exactly is value? Is it really nurturing my heart and nourishing my mind and creating in me the kind of citizenship that allows me to become all God intended for me to become? So I would say that it may be different in different places, and we in higher education are challenged to interpret that value in a purposeful, meaningful, pragmatic, and applicable way. But I can tell you in our institution, I think we do a really good job in ensuring that parents who pay for their education or students who borrow money to go to school get solid value that is amortized over a lifelong experience.